we go into this topic. So let me begin by saying one, I am not a mental health professional. That's a disclaimer. I'm not a mental health professional. I do not have any specialized training in the field of mental health. So I'm not talking to you today from as a mental health practitioner or someone with specialized training. Other than a few psychology courses in undergraduate school and in graduate school, I did study some of Freud's work and some of Jung's work. But other than that, I really did not focus in psychology or any area that deal with mental health. My major field, especially in graduate school, was in religious studies and spirituality. So my sermon today comes first from my training in the field of religious studies. Second, my exposure, my own personal exposure to mental health concerns within faith communities that I have been involved with. I'm not talking in general, I'm talking about my own personal experience here. And third, to my family history, as well as my own history with mental health concerns. So what is mental health? Bettina shared some of the myths and then try to debunk those with facts. So what is mental health? 1 in 5 adults, as Bettina shared, will experience a mental health condition each year, 1 out of 5. So there's more than 5 of us adults on this call. I'm not sure how many are in social media, and we'll watch this later, but one of the 5 of us will experience a mental health condition over the next year. Mental health, though, like one's physical health, requires ongoing attention and care. So physically, those of us that are adults understand, or we should, that our physical health and maintaining our physical health is not a one-time event. You don't go to the doctor once in a lifetime and then show up again, 50 years later. Maintaining health is something that's an ongoing process that involves medical attention. It involves a healthy lifestyle, what you eat, what you drink, exercise, etc. Likewise, mental health is not a one-time event. It's something that requires our attention as an ongoing process. Your physical health can influence your mental health, both positively and negatively. Also, life experiences, work, your social and economic environment, relationships, and the community you live in. The importance of being mentally healthy is that it contributes to how you feel, think, and act, either in a healthy, life-affirming ways that lead you to being able to enjoy your life, to live effectively, dealing with life's challenges. Because it's a given, those of us that have lived beyond the age of 2 know that life has challenges, and that's not to paint those challenges as either negative or positive. They're just challenges. They're challenges for a 1-year-old or 18-month-old to learn how to walk. They're challenges to a 1-year-old to a 2-year-old to break teeth. So life comes with challenges. Having a good mental health helps us to manage the challenges of life. Mental health supports one's ability to be resilient. And what is resilience? What does it mean to be resilient? Resiliency is the inner strength you use to cope or to deal with the stresses and the challenges of life. Resiliency is your ability to bounce back, your ability to come back, like the 1-year-old or the 18-month-old or the 9-month-old learning to walk. Resiliency is what gets that baby up when they fall down and lets them start all over again. Being resilient is the ability to get back up into life and not to resign yourself from not being engaged in your own life and well-being. So again, what is mental illness? We talked about mental health. I would just want to add, and this is again a non-clinical definition, just my own observation. For me, being mentally healthy has to do with having some congruency in your life where your behavior, who you believe yourself to be, who you say you are, and the behavior aligns in a congruent way. Meaning, if you would describe yourself as a person of integrity and honest and trustworthy, but your behavior shows something different, that suggests to me there's some imbalance there and that mentally that you're not quite as healthy as you think that you are. So what is mental illness? Mental illness is always with us. Let me just say this again from this layperson's idea. Mental health is always with us, I should say, excuse me, and may at any time be positive or negative. However, the effects of your ability to function over a long period of time will be determined how mentally stable or healthy you are. Like any physical illness, can disrupt or interrupt your life. Anytime you're diagnosed with a serious illness or a simple cold, or we know COVID, it can disrupt your daily routine. It can disrupt and interrupt your ability to function and be engaged in community. Likewise, with mental health, when your mental health is not stable, it can create the same kind of effect. For those dealing with mental illness, this becomes their challenge in managing their mental health. So everybody should, I would suggest, and must, I would offer, maintain their mental health the same way we do our physical health. Likewise, if you are physically dealing with an illness, a serious illness like cancer, or diabetes, or high blood pressure, hypertension, or some other kind, Crohn's disease, or some other kind of illness that you are living with, you can manage that to the degree where it's not disrupting and interrupting your life. And other than you telling someone or those close to you being aware of the condition that you have, you can function and lead a happy, long life for many people. Likewise, with mental health, you can be diagnosed, I would offer, with a mental disorder that can be managed over time with the proper treatment and intervention, where you too can live a long, productive, and happy life. However, I would suggest we all must be constantly surveyors and intentionally do those things that support our mental health, even if we are not diagnosed with a mental illness. Again, like physical health, mental health must be maintained. So today I want to just share briefly from this notion of mental health and spirituality, parallel realities. In order to have this conversation, though, I would say that we have to first deal with the elephant in the room, and that is the stigma around mental health or mental disorders or mental illness, many of which are rooted in the myths about mental health. And we try to just address a few of those as we begin. Mental health, like physical health, is rooted in the human condition. It's our shared histories. As long as we have existed as a human family, we have been challenged with maintaining both our physical and our mental well-being. Albeit at different times that was understood differently, nevertheless, that's always been a part of the human condition. We've made tremendous advancements over the last centuries in understanding health and wellness, treatments and cures physically. And we've also gained some insights into causes and treatments and how to assess and diagnose and help people maintain good mental health. However, one of the areas where we have historically lagged behind in both physical and mental health has been, for me, in our experience within certain communities of color and within our communities of faith at the intersection of race and gender. So let me just share, again, as I should say, from my experience, growing up in the Black Pentecostal church, in the wake, I was born during that period where the Tuskegee experiment overshadowed our collective imagination. And the kind of medical experiments that were done on Black women's bodies still haunted our communities. There was this collective fear of the medical field and resistance to treatment by both physicians and a lack of acknowledgement of mental health issues within our communities. mental health or mental disorders were most often understood as being the work of quote unquote the devil, um, demon possession, character weaknesses, or lack of faith in God. For Black folks in a country where at your best you were dehumanized and lacked basic treatment as a human being mentally fragile wasn't an option. Uh, it wasn't something that one could admit to. Again, I lived during the time when it was very easy to commit someone to a mental institution, either vis-a-vis a family member or the state. It didn't take much to say someone was quote unquote crazy and put them away and throw away the key. Just being Black and wanting more than the system afforded, you could be considered having a mental disorder. Just being Black and not wanting to live in a society where you had to deal with racism and discrimination and be terrorized on a day-to-day basis, you could be deemed by other cultures as being mentally unstable. 400 years of slavery, oppression, Jim Crow, segregation, white domestic terrorism it's no wonder that Black folks and other communities of color, as we've learned today, who've experienced similar plights in these United States of America and in foreign lands, to wonder that there's any sanity left in us at all. Yet we've managed to cope with what we had. We found ways where we were able to express our anger, our frustration, our fears, our dreams, hopes, and pains through our music, through our art, through our love for our family and connections, and through our faith, and most particularly for me, through church. So being deeply spiritual, I believe, was the salvation of people of color. But when the world could not offer them a physical plane or material world where they or we could be fully human, we found a spiritual plane. We found a spiritual reality where we could transcend the limitations of this world and thrive. What one does to survive is good and necessary, and it should never be judged. If you got through a situation, if you made it over some challenge in life, if you were able to overcome, and whatever you did to survive the abuse, the harm, you made it. However, it's important to note that survival and thriving are two different mindsets and require different brain waves and different emotional energy and affect the body both physically and mentally different. You're in a different frame of mind when you're trying to survive versus when you're thriving. It takes a different kind of energy. It affects your body physically in a very different way when you're in survival mode versus when you're in thriving mode, which means you are happy, you're enjoying your life, and you're fulfilling who you are. The church for many of us was our place of solace. It was our only refuge, and it was the place of validation in a world that told us we were less than human. It was the place where we could wail and we could holler and we could dance and fall out, foam at the mouth, and let go of all that pent up emotions that we could not express elsewhere without being deemed crazy. The church was the place of comfort. Is where we were together, where we celebrated each other, we comforted each other. We did not have to explain ourselves to one another because we recognized in each other's eyes our own reality. It was in the safety of the church that we were able to survive. While we were in the church, however, the world outside was continuously moving and changing and evolving around us. The civil rights legislation came and went, and women's rights came and went, and an opening of what it means to be a free human being was challenged and changed on this plane in the United States and on the world landscape. And so we begin to think about ourselves and our place in the world very differently. And so we thought the struggle was over for many of us, communities of color, especially speaking now from my experience as an African-American woman. But we found that the struggle was not over, but that it was masked behind different wallpaper. It was the same rotting termite-filled walls, but it had been covered over with fresh new wallpaper. The reality of many of us was one of coping in a hostile environment and finding acceptance in the church. But when we thought the landscape had changed, the interior of the church also began to change. Perhaps it had been changing all along, and because we were in survival mode, we didn't necessarily see it. Our perception what we were able to perceive given the circumstance of our life at that time. While our spirits thrived in this alternative world of the church that it became our place of refuge, we left our minds outside the church. And when we tried to reclaim them, we realized that we were living in two parallel realities. The reality of our spirituality, which would take us to other places, even without any copacetic drugs. We could literally in church, and I've experienced this myself, and I've witnessed it myself, transcend this natural plane and be taken to another place, just in the spirit, just through the music, just through the instruments and the gathering, and sometimes even through the preaching. But when we would come down off that high, the reality of our lives was that we were still dealing with issues of mental health. How do we merge the two? How do we forge the gap between our minds and our spirit? Confronting and dismantling the stigma of mental health, or more precisely, mental illness. The notion of cognizant dissonance allows one to separate internally and find a mental path that allows you to harmonize the external world with your internal perceptions. When there's that disconnect, you're able to find or carve out like a roadway mentally that to harmonize those two. So even though it makes sense to you, to the outside world, it's still an imbalance. Can we be spiritually sound and mentally sound simultaneously? What does it mean to have a spirituality that functions energetically at a level beyond the limitations of our physical or material world, yet still be grounded in a reality that has quote unquote right perceptions and makes use of available resources to maintain both physical health and mental health? My concern today is that our churches, which were once our institutions for survival, have become, for far too many of us, and I'm not at all talking about all of them, because many of them still hold up that standard, and those that do, you know who you are. But for far too many of us, unhealthy places where those people can hide out, not just in the pews, but in the leadership role, in positions of leadership, masking their own mental health challenges. The safe, sacred, spiritual places become what seems like analogous to this movie that's from the 70s, I believe, One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the home of the mentally challenged, or an alternate reality. For those who have rejected the structure of organized religion or the church, there seems to be little balance in coming to terms with reconciling one's mental health with one's spirituality. My own personal experience, and I'm going to have to end here, and then I'll probably do part 2 of this at some other point. But I grew up in a family and a community where mental health disorders was the best known secret. In my household, there was paranoia, schizophrenia, and depression. In the community, the neighborhood where I lived, there was alcoholism, depression, paranoia, delusional thinking. In the churches that I frequented, there was delusional thinking and overall behaviors that were inconsistent with the reality of the lived experiences of the parishioners. So I grew up in an atmosphere where mental health or mental challenges was prevalent, and it wasn't just my reality. I thought that as a child growing up, that being the best known secret, this was my household, this was my neighborhood, these were my churches. But no, as an adult, I've come to realize this is the existence that we live in. Hence the stigma and the best known secret, not just for myself, but for many of us. In other words, there were two parallel realities: mental health, which for the most part was ignored, even when the pink elephant in the room was sucking all the oxygen out of you, and the reality of one's spirituality that could not save one from the fragmented and tormented mental state. I've come to find that spirituality can be an escape. It can be a tool. It can be a safe place to be, but it cannot save us from the torment of our own mental instability or challenges. The behavior of those most affected and impacted could not be denied. At some point, I had to deal with my own mental health as I did my physical health. I mean, I didn't grow up going to doctors regularly. That wasn't the way of the world in my community back then. Physically, we went there for the dentist, you went for your eyes, you went if you were pregnant, but you didn't routinely go for annual checkups or routinely go to the doctor for physical issues, let alone for mental health. So I had to deal with my own mental health as I did my physical health, as I woke one morning and realized that my body had some challenges, but I also realized that my mental health was in crisis, and I needed to seek guidance and professional support if I was to regain my mental stability. So let me say this as I close: there is no shame to being diagnosed with a mental disorder. Let me say that again. There is no shame in being diagnosed with a mental disorder, no more than there is in being diagnosed with cancer, with hypertension, with diabetes, with Crohn's disease, with kidney disease, with any kind of disease. There is no shame. So let's just put that elephant out of the room. Remove the stigma. Many disorders are not the work of the devil, my dear friends. They are not about demon possession, my loved ones, or a character with weakness or flaw. Let us be clear. They cannot ever be about mind control and influences of the environment in which we live. I'm going to have to end here, and I'll pick up part two at some point, and I'll begin to talk about this idea of mind control and the influences of the environment in which we live and how it can affect our physical health and our mental health. Thank you for just sharing with me in this conversation. Ashe and amen. As I bring us back to center, we have our affirmations. I'm going to ask Bettina to cue those up if she can. And before, I know Nadia was having some trouble coming in and out. I had promised to ask my sister if she wanted to share anything before we do the affirmations and come back to center. Sister Bandley, if you would like to share anything before we close out, as we move towards closing.
Thank you, Saundra. I just was applauding your breakdown, description, and explanation. It was awesome. You might not be a mental health counselor, but your insight was amazing. Very good, very well done. I will just have one point to basically kind of bring us home to look towards the future with a hope that health and wellness is something that begins before we're born. And with our parents in our mother's womb in our household. Health and wellness is not just a responsibility of our home, it's responsibility of our educational system. I don't think Shakespeare taught me about health and wellness. I don't think some of the history I learned taught me about health and wellness, at least not the kind in my community. I don't think many of the classes I took through my 12 years of basic learning taught me about health and wellness, which is sad because we cannot apply what we don't know. And we're talking about mental illness, and I challenge us all to realize we won't be able to identify and communicate with someone with mental illness if we don't recognize what mental health is. Because we won't be able to distinguish the difference. We're not taught to even validate each other in our health and well-being state of being. Our jokes are borderline the criticism of mental illness. Do we not realize that? Our TV sitcoms talk about more mental illness and jokes, so we really don't even know how to communicate about it without joking. There's a lot of educational awareness that needs to change, and I hope our mindsets focus on changing that dialogue of what is mental health, what is well-being, how do you maintain it, how do you see it in each other, how do you validate it in your family, in your friends, and the most important component of any health and wellness is the number one need we all have is to connect, and connection means we need community.
Yes.
And so thank you. And I again appreciate everything you broke down. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Bailey. Thank you for just sharing that. We're going to move to bring ourselves back to center with our affirmations for mental health and well-being. Bettina, if you're able to share those in our hearing for us.
Affirmations for mental health and well-being. I will practice self-care. I embrace the present moment. I am letting go of unrealistic expectations. I am allowed to feel upset, angry, and sad sometimes. That's part of being human. My personal boundaries are important, and I'm allowed to express my needs to others. No is a complete sentence, and I don't have to explain or justify my boundaries. I am allowed to feel good and to experience pleasure in life. I am worthy of receiving good things and accomplishing my goals in life. The past is the past, and my past doesn't predict my future. I forgive myself for mistakes I made, and I refuse to hold them against myself. I am allowed to take up space, to have desires, and to have a voice. I don't have to give up my hopes and dreams. Growth is sometimes bumpy and isn't always linear, but I will stay for the course. Healing is within reach for me. I love my body, my mind, my dreams, and my goals. I will surround myself with people who love and support me unconditionally. I accept myself for who I am. Today, I will do my best.
Ashe and amen. Take these with you during the week, and may they encourage you and allow you to stay on a path to positive mental health and well-being. All right, we're going to segue to the announcements. Nadia, are you able to share on the screen for me?
Yeah, let me just pull it up.
Thank you. So we have a lot of exciting things coming up over the next few weeks into June, and I just want to share a little bit of that with you. First, as always, we offer the opportunity for you to share support 4 ways: through email invoice, through Cash App, PayPal, or via snail mail. We're going to be launching our biannual fundraising drive June 15th, and we'll be letting everyone know a little bit more about that. So 1 month, we're going to open that window from June 15th to July 15th for those who want to support our community to do so in a big way. So I'm just going through them as you're trying to pull it up, Nadia. Also, on Tuesdays, we're still with our Bible study, community Bible study here at 950 Bergen Street in person and via our YouTube channel with Pastor Eric Andrews. This will be our 6th week coming up this Tuesday in an 8-week series and on rediscovering the message of Jesus. And so we're excited about what's been happening here in our community, coming in and being a part of the study, and we appreciate Pastor Andrews for his efforts. Wednesdays, 10 a.m. to 11 with Shaka George, Tai Chi classes, Discovering the Healer Within. If you are in the Newark area, or if you are in the greater Newark area, come on down. Wednesday mornings, 10 a.m. to 11. You will not, I promise you, you will not regret it. It can only benefit you both physically, mentally, and spiritually. Right here, 950 Bergen Street in Newark. On Fridays, we have our meditation and our bag lunch. That's 12 p.m. to 12:30. Our doors are open to the community. Coming up next week, May the 28th, Brenda will be back and she's going to be sharing again, continuing on this theme, mental health, overcoming the inner critic. That's going to be her presentation, and we're looking forward to that as we move to close out this month and our discussion on mental health for this month. But I'm going to come back and do part 2 because I have a whole nother set of notes to continue from today. The Divine Feminine Study Group, we did our 9-week series. We ended 2 weeks ago. We will resume. I had first said May 23rd. I'm still putting together our topic and the lessons, and I want it to be where it is both informative and inspirational for you. So I'm going to move that date we have to June 20th. So we will resume that study, and hopefully next week I'll have the topic clear that I can share with you. Also, Triumph Life Ministry, music ministry under Wesley. We released last week on Mother's Day our latest single, The Forces of Nature. If you haven't had opportunity to download it yet, you can go to Apple, Spotify, iTunes, and other digital platforms. It's also on our YouTube channel, as is all of our other singles that we've released. We started this project last August, and it's just been a wonderful experience. And we have all of our music has been in line with our message, with our energy, with the spirit of the church and who we are. So the first Sunday in June, Reverend John will be back with us presenting. He'll bring the sermon, and his topic is the God of our mothers and fathers. I'm going to be just sharing more announcements about that in the coming weeks. The second Sunday in June, Minister Obina and our Nigerian church will be in charge. They haven't done this in a while, so Nigerian ministry will be on with us. I don't know yet what their outline will be, but we're looking forward to being in community with them. On the third Sunday in June, I'm really excited because we're going to release our next single. That's also Father's Day. And we have our next single that's coming out titled Mama Don't Worry. And you say, well, what does that have to do with fathers? But the message and the lyrics of the song fits into the topic that we will be talking about that day. So part of our mission and ministry here at Triumph Life is to really balance out this notion of a spiritual community and a loving community is represented by how we show up as upholders of justice in the community. And I don't know that, I believe it was Cornel West that said, justice is what love looks like in public. And so for us, justice is important in our communities. And we're going to be looking at this issue of immigration and how there's certain legislation that's being passed that's targeting illegal immigrants, making it really in a terroristic way. Everyone in this country are immigrants. The Africans that came here on slave ships was forced here, but otherwise everyone migrated here except the indigenous populations. So how dare we marginalize and criminalize and dehumanize populations of people? We'll talk about that more. I'll share more with you next week, but look forward to that on the third Sunday in June. So I'm excited about everything that's happening here at Triumph Life. And thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for joining us each week, each Sunday, in whatever way that you show up and that you're present with us, whether it's your prayers, whether it's your thoughts, your ideas, your energy. I thank you. Our team thanks you. Our board thanks you. We appreciate you. And we feel the love. We feel the energy. As we close out, I'm going to ask Nadia, who's reading the words to live by? Is it Nadia, I believe? Oh, Bettina. I forget who I put down to share. If you're able to pull it up, if not, I can go ahead and do it.
I could read it. I just can't share the screen, but I could read the
That's
words.
fine. I understand, Nadia. Thank you.
Words to live by. The heart of the person before you is a mirror. See there your own form. Shinto.
Mm. Let that settle in. As we leave today, let that settle in you. As we think about ourselves, we think about where we began with our meditation, I am. But the heart of the person before you is a mirror where you can see your own form. All right, Minister Obina, I'm going to ask you to do our closing prayer if you can. If not, I will share it. And Wesley, what are we going to do for our music to close out? You want to cue up something or?
Yes, I'll pull up something that I'm excited to hear.
Okay, all right. So you want to play that and then I'll do the closing prayer.
I would like to do it after the closing prayer.
After the prayer? All right, that'll work. That'll work. So let us pray. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end war, for we know that you have made the world in a way that people must find their own path to peace within themselves and with their neighbors. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end starvation, for you have already given us the resources with which to feed the entire world if we would only use them wisely. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to root out prejudice, for you have already given us eyes with which to see the good in all people if we would only use them rightly. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end despair, for you have already given us the power to clear away slums and to give hope if we would only use our power justly. We cannot merely pray to you, O God, to end disease, for you have already given us great minds with which to search out cures and healing, if we would only use them constructively. Therefore, we pray instead, O God, for strength, determination, and willpower to do instead of just pray, to become instead to merely wish. Ashe and amen.